For centuries, humans had dreamed of reaching the stars. When they finally did, they found they were not the first. The galaxy was full of life-grand civilizations that had existed for thousands, even millions, of years. Their ships could cross light years in seconds. Their weapons could erase cities without a sound. Their technology was so advanced that Earth's greatest inventions looked like toys, and the galaxy laughed to the elder species. Human science was clumsy. It was based on trial and error, on guesses and bold risks. Humans did not follow the precise and perfect methods of the ancient races. They improvised. They failed often. They broke their own rules to make something work. The other species called it chaos thinking. They saw it as weakness, but today, in the shining hall of convergence, that chaos might be the only thing left to save them all. The hall floated in orbit above the gas giant Varela, a massive world with golden clouds and silver lightning flashing deep within its storms. From the chamber's crystal walls, the view was breathtaking, but no one inside was looking at it. The High Council of the Galactic Alliance sat in a half-circle of tall seats, each one shaped for a different species, scaled, furred, crystalline, or metal-skinned. At the center of the room stood Captain Ilara Vance of Earth Fleet Command. Her black uniform was perfectly pressed, her dark hair tied back, her eyes calm but sharp. She was young compared to most commanders in the Alliance, but there was something in her stance, a quiet, unshakable will that could be felt even without words. Behind her stood Admiral Darius Holt, older, broader, and carrying the weight of decades of battles on his shoulders. His face was weathered, his jaw set like stone. The Valari delegate, a tall serpent-like being, with skin like polished emerald, and a crown of translucent frills, spoke first. Its voice was soft, but carried a sharp edge. "Captain Vance, your request is unusual. You wish for humans to lead the defense against the Krith Dominion. Do you understand what you are asking?" The name Krith Dominion made the air in the chamber feel heavier. They were an ancient predator race, their ships like black blades cutting through the void. No fleet had ever defeated them. They came without warning, destroyed without mercy, and vanished into the dark. Entire systems had fallen to them. Elleray kept her voice steady. "With respect, Counselor, my fleet has faced the Krith before. We survived. Not many can say that." The Orlan ambassador, a being made entirely of shifting crystal shards, tilted its head. A cool blue light pulsed from within its core. "Survival is not victory, human." Before Alara could reply, Admiral Holt stepped forward. His deep voice carried through the chamber like the echo of a distant drum. "Maybe not, but survival means we're still here to fight again. And fighting again is the first step to winning." Murmurs spread through the council. Some looked amused. Others seemed irritated. To them, human confidence always walked too close to arrogance. The Valera's frills rippled with disdain. "Humans fight like cornered animals. You use chance, disorder, and risk. That is not strategy." Ilara allowed herself a small smile. "Sometimes, Counselor, chance and risk are strategy." Before the Valari could answer, the great crystal doors of the hall burst open. A messenger drone shot through the air, its spherical body flashing urgent red lights. It hovered in the center of the chamber and projected a holographic image. The image was chaos, a star system burning, ships breaking apart under streams of enemy fire, cities on the surface of a world exploding into firestorms. The voice of a desperate commander crackled through static. "This is Raal Prime. We are under attack. Krith warships in orbito god shields failing." The feed cut out. Silence filled the hall. The alien delegates who had moments ago been mocking humans now looked tense, even afraid. Raal Prime was no minor colony, was a key stronghold of the Alliance. If it fell, the Krith would have a clear path to the central systems. The Chancellor, A towering insectoid with armor like polished obsidian slowly turned its many black eyes toward Alara. Its mandibles clicked once. "Very well, Captain Vance. The command is yours. You and your human fleet will lead the defense of Roll Prime." Then the Chancellor's voice hardened. "But understand this. Failure will not only mean the loss of Roll Prime, it will mean the end of your species' place in the Alliance. We will not waste resources on a reckless people." Alara met the Chancellor's gaze without blinking. "Then we will simply have to win." A thin silence followed her words. Some delegates still looked doubtful. Some whispered among themselves. But for the first time, a few pairs of alien eyes watched her with something like curiosity. As Alara and Holt turned to leave, Holt spoke quietly, so only she could hear. "You realize they're not giving us this command because they believe in us." "I know," Alara said. "They're giving it to us because they think we'll fail, and they don't want to risk their own ships." Holt gave a grim nod. "Then we'll prove them wrong." The two humans walked out of the hall, the crystal doors closing behind them with a deep echo. Outside, the great void of space stretched endlessly. Somewhere in that darkness, the Krith were coming, and somewhere deep inside Alara Vance, past the calm expression and steady voice, a fire had already been lit. They could call human science primitive. They could call human tactics chaotic. But soon, the galaxy would see what chaos could do. The human fleet was docked at Ardent Station, a massive ring-shaped fortress orbiting the cold star Thyros. From the outside, the ships looked small compared to the towering Alliance cruisers nearby. Human vessels were compact, rough-edged, and scarred from past battles. To the elder species, they looked like relics built for a galaxy humans did not understand. Inside the main hangar, engineers moved like ants. Sparks flew from welding torches. Crates of ammunition, fuel cells, and strange metal containers were being loaded. The air smelled of oil, ozone, and urgency. Captain Alara Vance walked down the metal ramp of the Horizon's wake. Her flagship, followed by Admiral Darius Holt. Crew members straightened when they saw them. Alara gave a short nod to each, her face calm, but inside her mind was already racing. The clock was ticking. The Krith would reach Raw Prime in less than 4 days. Near the central command table, 3 alien officers from the Alliance were waiting. They were observers, sent by the Council to coordinate. In truth, they were here to watch and report. The first was a tall Averin, with long silver hair and eyes like frost. His name was Council Commander Cirrus Kale. He studied Alara like a teacher watching a slow student. "Your fleet is small, Captain Vance. You have 23 warships. The Krith will arrive with no less than 80. The second was Carol Velen, a 4-armed reptilian tactician from the Drask Dominion. His deep voice rumbled with doubt. "Even with Alliance reinforcements, your ships will not last an hour in direct combat." The third was a quiet, insectoid envoy named Tyrak, who simply said, "We have seen human tactics before. They are unpredictable. The Krith are not impressed by unpredictability." Alara didn't argue. She leaned over the holographic star map and began setting up formations. "We will not face them head-on. We'll fight on our terms." Cirrus Kale raised an eyebrow, running and hiding. "No," Alara said, luring. Admiral Holt took over, pointing at the 3 moons of Roll Prime. "These orbits give us choke points. Narrow spaces where only a few ships can pass at a time. The Krith like to fight in open space. We will deny them that." Carovellin hissed. "The Krith will not take such bait." Alara gave him a thin smile. "They will if they think they're chasing prey." The alien officers exchanged glances. They still didn't believe, but they didn't stop her either. Hours later, Alara stood alone in the observation deck, staring out at the human ships. They were not perfect. Their armor was patched. Their weapons were not the most powerful in the galaxy. But every piece of metal out there had a story built, fast, repaired in battle, improved in secret. She thought of Earth, the crowded cities, the restless oceans, the way humans had learned to survive storms, earthquakes, wars, and famine. Humanity had never been the strongest or the smartest in the galaxy, but they had always been the ones who refused to stop. A soft chime broke her thoughts. It was Lieutenant Mason Rhee, her communications officer, his young face bright with determination. "Captain, all ships report combat readiness at 70%. Engineering teams are still making last-minute modifications." "Modifications?" she asked. Mason hesitated. "Some of the crews. They're adding experimental shield boosters. Stuff the Alliance said was too unstable." Alara didn't ask for permission from the Council. She simply said, "Tell them to work fast and keep it quiet." Back in the hangar, Admiral Holt was with the fighter pilots. They stood in a loose circle, helmets under their arms. These were the youngest in the fleet, men and women barely out of training, but their eyes were sharp. Holt spoke to them in a low, steady voice. "The Krith think they know how we fight. They've seen our ships. They've studied our maneuvers. They believe they can predict us. Tomorrow, you will prove them wrong." A pilot named Kara Liu stepped forward. "Sir, with respect, are we really going to fight them with these old interceptors?" Holt grinned slightly. "Old maybe, but there's a reason old blades are still sharp." He didn't tell them the rest. That each fighter had been fitted with a strange new device, an Earth invention, dismissed by the Alliance as inefficient. The black shapes of the Krith warships emerged from the darkness like predators from the deep. They were massive, sleek, and jagged, their hulls absorbing light instead of reflecting it. Their weapons pulsed faint red, like the slow beat of some ancient, dangerous heart. From the bridge of the Horizon's wake, Captain Ilara Vance watched the tactical display. Dozens of enemy signals filled the edge of the map, moving in perfect formation. They were disciplined, cold, and confident. The Krith commander sent a single transmission to the Alliance fleet. The voice was deep and harsh, the words translated into the common galactic tongue. "Surrender, Roll Prime, or be erased." Admiral Holt's lips pressed into a thin line. "That's their mercy offer. They only give it once." Alara gave no reply to the Krith. Instead, she sent orders to her fleet. Phase 1. All ships fall back toward Moon 3. The alien observers on the bridge exchanged confused looks. Council Commander Sirius Kale stepped closer. "You're retreating before the battle even begins." "No," Ilara said. "I'm moving them where I want them." The human fleet began pulling back. To the Krith, it must have looked like weakness, like prey fleeing from the predator's teeth. They took the bait. Their formation broke slightly as they surged forward, eager to finish the fight quickly. From the moon's shadow, hidden deep in the jagged surface trenches, small human drones began to activate. They were nothing impressive, just modified mining probes, fitted with basic engines and strange antenna arrays. The Alliance had dismissed them as non-combat devices, but humans had wired them for something entirely different. In the hangar bays of the Horizon's wake, Lieutenant Mason remonitored the signal link. "Captain, drones are in position. Activating now." Ilara nodded. "Do it." The drones sent out a burst of strange electromagnetic noise, irregular, shifting, like a pattern with no pattern. It wasn't meant to jam the Krith's sensors. It was meant to confuse them, and it worked. The Krith ships began to drift slightly off course. Their targeting systems started locking on to empty space. Their formations wavered as they adjusted. On the bridge, Admiral Holt's voice was calm but sharp. Phase 2. Open fire. Human warships spun in place, their forward cannons lighting up the darkness. Streams of plasma and railgun fire cut through the space between the fleets. 2 Krith ships took heavy hits before they could even realign. The alien observers were silent now, their eyes fixed on the battle. Karo, Velen, the reptilian tactician, finally spoke in a low hiss. "You are using chaos as a weapon." "Exactly," Alara said. "They train for perfect order. We give them the opposite." But the Krith were not slow to adapt. Within minutes, they adjusted their systems to filter out the strange signals. Their formations tightened again. The red glow of their weapons grew brighter. The Krith unleashed their first counterattack. Beams of energy tore through the void, slamming into the shields of human ships. One destroyer, the Iron Dawn, took a direct hit to its engines. It spun helplessly, fire spilling from its hull. Ilara's jaw tightened. She opened a channel. "All ships cover the Iron Dawn. Get them behind the moon's shadow." 3 frigates moved in instantly, taking heavy fire as they shielded the crippled destroyer. The crew of the Iron Dawn managed to stabilize just as the Krith began circling. The enemy was pushing harder now. They had the numbers. They had the heavier weapons. Every moment, the human fleet was being forced back. On the bridge, the tension was thick. Every console glowed with incoming damage reports. Crew members moved quickly, their faces lit by the cold light of the screens. Cerise Kale finally turned to Alara, his voice carrying a note of warning. "Your first trick worked, but they are adapting faster than you can reposition. You will be overrun." Alara didn't answer right away. She was staring at the tactical display, watching the Krith. Ships sweep in from multiple angles. She could feel it. This was the moment she had been waiting for. "All ships," she said quietly, "initiate Phase 3. In orbit above Moon 3, hidden among the craters, a series of metallic towers unfolded. They had been placed there weeks ago, during routine mining operations, another human non-combat activity the Alliance had ignored. The towers powered on, releasing clouds of metallic dust into space. At first it looked like nothing more than glittering debris, but as the Krith ships entered the dust cloud, their shields began to flicker. The dust was laced with microscale EMP, charges small enough to be harmless to planets, but enough to scramble the fine-tuned shield harmonics of Krith warships. One by one, patches of their black armor were exposed. Holt slammed his fist onto the console. "Now, hit them hard." The human fleet unleashed a coordinated strike. Railgun slugs ripped through exposed armor. Plasma bursts burned through weakened shields. 2 more Krith ships exploded in rapid flashes of fire and debris. For the first time, the Krith fleet hesitated. Their perfect advance slowed. They began pulling back to restabilize their shields. Ilara exhaled slowly. Phase 3 had bought them breathing room, but she knew it wouldn't last. "We've made them cautious," she said to Holt. "That means they'll change tactics, and when they do, it'll be worse." Holt nodded grimly. "Then we'd better be ready with the next surprise." The alien observers were no longer mocking. They were watching in silence, their expressions unreadable. But inside, some of them were starting to understand humans didn't win because they had the best ships or the most powerful weapons. They won because they refused to fight. By the rules everyone else followed. Outside the viewports, the Krith fleet was reforming. Their lines were tighter, their advance slower. But there was no mistaking it, they were coming again. The first trap had worked, but Ilara knew the real test was still ahead. Somewhere deep in the darkness of space, the second phase of her plan waited. And it was far more dangerous than the first asterisk. The Krith came like shadows with teeth. Their ships were black and sharp, shaped like blades forged for killing. They moved in perfect lines, silent but full of deadly purpose. Each one was bigger than a human warship, and each one carried weapons powerful enough to break a city apart. On the bridge of the Horizon's wake, Captain Alara Vance stood with her hands behind her back, her eyes fixed on the tactical screen. Red dot Krith ships were pouring into the system, dozens of them, like a flood of darkness. Admiral Darius Holt stood beside her, his face calm but his eyes watching every movement of the enemy. "They've seen our numbers," he said quietly. "They know we're outmatched." Ilara nodded. Good. Let them think we're afraid. The Krith commander sent a single message to the Alliance fleet. The voice was deep and cold, translated by the ship's system. Leave this world, or be destroyed. Ilara didn't answer. She gave a short order instead. Phase 1. All ships, fall back to Moon 3. Around them, the human fleet began to retreat. To the Krith, it must have looked like the prey was running. Their formation tightened. They sped up, eager to strike before their target could escape. In the corner of the bridge, Council Commander Cirrus Kale, the tall silver-haired Avaran, spoke in a sharp tone. You're retreating before the battle even begins. I'm moving them where I want them, Ilara replied, without turning her head. Hidden on the far side of Moon 3, deep in the jagged surface trenches, waited a secret one the Krith knew nothing about. Weeks earlier, mining probes had been placed there under the excuse of resource collection, but they had been rebuilt for war. From the hangar control station, Lieutenant Mason re-reported, Captain, drones are ready. Activating, on your mark. Mark, Ilara said. The drones rose from the moon's surface and scattered into space. They were small, barely the size of a lifeboat, and armed with no weapons. Instead, they carried strange antenna arrays and devices no other race used. Suddenly, the space around the Krith ships filled with noise, not sound, but electronic chaos. Their targeting systems began locking onto empty space. Their navigation readings twitched and flickered. For the first time, their perfect lines broke. Admiral Holt's voice was steady but sharp. Phase 2. Fire human ships spun in unison. Railguns fired solid metal slugs at incredible speed. Plasma cannons sent glowing streams of blue fire into the enemy lines. The first 2 Krith ships were hit hard, one spiraling out of formation, the other exploding in a sharp flash of light. Carol Velen, the reptilian tactician observing the battle, hissed in surprise. You are using confusion as a weapon. Ilara's mouth curved into a faint smile. The Krith train for perfect order. We give them something they can't train for. But the Krith were not slow learners. Within minutes, their systems began to filter out the noise. Their formation reformed. The red glow on their weapons brightened. Then they struck back. Beams of pure energy ripped across space, slamming into human shields. The Iron Dawn, a heavy destroyer, took a direct hit to its engines. Fire and smoke filled its rear compartments. The ship began to spin, helpless. Ilara's voice was quick and clear. Cover the Iron Dawn. Get them behind the moon. 3 smaller frigates moved in, taking hits meant for the destroyer. Their shields shimmered under the strain, but they held just long enough for the Iron Dawn to limp to safety. The Krith pressed forward, their numbers overwhelming. Every second, more red warning lights flashed across the horizon's wake's control panels. Cirrus Kale stepped closer, his voice low. Your trick worked once, it will not work again. You cannot win like this, Ilara D. The dust cloud still shimmered in the darkness, tiny metallic particles reflecting the light of Rawl Prime's sun. For a few moments, the battlefield was almost still. The Krith fleet hung at a distance, their black warships motionless except for the slow rotation of their weapon banks. On the bridge of the horizon's wake, the crew worked in tense silence. Damage reports scrolled across the screens. Hull breaches had been sealed, but several ships were running low on shield power. Admiral Holt studied the tactical map. They're holding back. That's not like them. Ilara's eyes narrowed. They're changing their approach. They won't come at us the same way twice. Her words proved true a moment later. The Krith fleet split in 2. One half began, moving slowly, toward the dust cloud again, but the other half curved away, vanishing into the shadow of Rawl Prime. Council Commander Cirrus Kale frowned. They're flanking you. They'll come from both sides at once. Ilara turned to her communications officer. Signal all ships. Form Delta Shield. Prepare for close combat. The human fleet shifted into a tight formation, ships overlapping their shield ranges to create a solid wall. This was a defensive move, one the Alliance rarely used because it limited mobility. But Alara wasn't planning to run. Minutes later, the darkness above the planet erupted. The flanking force reappeared, coming in fast from behind. At the same moment, the main force charged through the metallic dust, shields already stabilizing against its effects. The sky lit up. Krith beams tore through the void, slamming into human shields. The Iron Dawn, still damaged from the first wave, took another hit and lost all power. Its lights went dark, drifting helplessly. "Get rescue teams to the Iron Dawn," Elara ordered, her voice tight. A pair of frigates broke formation to reach the crippled destroyer, but in doing so, a gap opened in the shield wall. The Krith didn't miss it. 3 black warships dove straight for the opening, their weapons blazing. Holt's voice was sharp. "Rotate formation. Fill that gap." The humans moved fast, but not fast enough. One of the Krith ships slipped through, cutting into the heart of the human formation. Its weapons lit up the side of the Horizon's wake, rocking the flagship with a blast that sent crew members stumbling. Sparks rained down from an overloaded console. Mason re-shouted from communications, "We've lost aft shields. Port side. Guns offline." Elara gripped the rail beside her command chair. The Krith ship was now too close for heavy weapons. It was circling like a predator inside their own defense. "Bring the dorsal cannons to bear," she ordered. "Target its engines." The Horizon's wake turned hard, its guns firing at near point-blank range. The blasts tore into the Krith's rear thrusters, sending it spinning out of control. Holt didn't waste the moment. "All ships, fire on that target." A storm of human weapons struck the disabled Krith vessel. It erupted in a flash so bright it lit the bridge, but there was no time to celebrate. Outside the formation, the other Krith ships pressed harder. The human fleet was holding, but barely. Shields were flickering, weapons overheating. Carovelin, the reptilian tactician, turned to Elara. "If you keep this up, you will lose half your fleet within the hour." Alara's expression didn't change. "That's why we're not keeping this up." She looked at Holt, and he gave a small nod. The time for the next move had come. "Initiate Operation Breakglass," Elara said. Cerise Kale's eyes widened. "What is that?" Elara didn't answer him. Instead, she watched as the order rippled through the fleet. Several small, fast ships detached from the main formation and accelerated toward Roll Prime. The Krith commander must have noticed. The black warships shifted, sending a group to intercept the smaller vessels. That was exactly what Elara wanted, from the shadow of the planet. The small ships vanished from sight, their hulls coated with an experimental stealth material the Alliance had dismissed as too unstable for combat. Seconds later, they reappeared right inside the Krith formation. They weren't there to fight. They were there to blind. Each ship launched a burst of flares and sensor disruptors. Explosions of light and false signals filled the Krith's targeting systems. For a few precious moments, their aim faltered. Elara gave the final command. "Now. Full forward assault. Push them back." The human fleet surged ahead, pouring fire into the disoriented enemy. Krith ships broke formation, some retreating, others turning too late to defend themselves. One after another, they began to fall back toward the edge of the system. On the bridge of the Horizon's wake, the crew could feel the shift. The fear was still there, but now it was mixed with something else. Hope. Masonry's voice broke through the noise. "Captain, the Krith are retreating from close range." Holt grinned faintly. "That won't last. They'll regroup and come back, stronger." Elara knew he was right. The battle wasn't over, not even close. But for the first time since the enemy had arrived, the humans had forced them to pull back. She turned to the alien observers. "Still think human tactics are just chaos?" Cerise Kale didn't answer. His cold eyes held a flicker of something. New. Respect. Outside. The black shapes of the Krith were already reforming in the distance. The second wave would be worse than the first, but Alara was ready, because the real part of Operation Breakglass hadn't even started yet. The Krith fleet did not retreat far. They gathered at the edge of the system like a dark storm, their ships aligning in perfect, unnerving symmetry. For a long moment, the human and alien observers aboard the Horizon's wake watched in silence. It was Holt who finally broke it. They're not regrouping for another skirmish. They're preparing something bigger. Sensors lit up with strange readings. Energy spikes, unlike anything the human fleet had seen before, began to grow within the Krith formation. Carovelin hissed softly, his scaled head lowering. I've seen this once before. They call it the Black Sun, a weapon that burns entire fleets in seconds. Mason Ree's face went pale. You're saying they can wipe us out with one shot? Velin nodded. And they will. Unless you run. Alara didn't even blink. Running isn't an option. Not while they can still reach Raal Prime. Cirrus Kale crossed his arms. You can't fight the Black Sun. Even the Draith Armada avoided it. Humanity will be ashes. In minutes. Alara turned to her crew. Bring the Aegis array online. The bridge fell silent. Even Holt stared at her. Alara, the Aegis hasn't been tested in real combat. Then it's time we test it, she said. Her voice was calm, but her hands were gripping the rails so hard her knuckles were white. The Aegis array had been humanity's most controversial invention. A shield system that didn't just block energy, it absorbed it, stored it, and fired it back. The science behind it had been laughed at in Alliance academies. The energy storage crystals were unstable. The refiring process was impossibly inefficient. The whole thing had been called a child's dream, but humans had kept building it anyway. The Krith weapon began to take shape. In the center of their fleet, a massive sphere of black light was forming. It swallowed nearby starlight, making the void around it darker than shadow. Waves of distortion rippled outward, making sensor readings glitch. On the Horizon's wake, the air felt heavy, as if the weapon's presence was pressing against every chest. They're charging at 70%, Ree reported. Ilara's voice was steady. All ships form around the Horizon's wake. Tighten the shield net. Feed all surplus power to the array. Holt glanced at her. If this fails, we won't be alive to regret it, she cut in. The Krith commander must have seen the human fleet huddling together. Maybe he thought they were bracing for annihilation. At 100% charge, the Black Sun pulsed once. Then it fired. It was not a beam, but a waving expanding wall of black fire rushing across space. Stars dimmed in its path. Small asteroids vaporized before touching it. The wave slammed into the human fleet, and the Aegis array screamed to life. A shimmering sphere of light erupted around the Horizon's wake and its escorts. The Black Sun's energy smashed into it, the shield flaring white, then gold, then blood red, as the crystals inside the array overloaded. Every light on the bridge flickered. Consoles sparked. Crew members were thrown to the floor as the shockwave pushed against them like an ocean trying to drown a ship. Ilara's teeth clenched. Hold. The shield shimmered wildly, but it did not break. Instead, it began to glow brighter. Ree's voice cracked in disbelief. It's absorbing it. The array is filling to capacity. Energy readings spiked off the charts. The array's storage core-dense lattice of exotic crystal was vibrating so violently, it seemed ready to shatter. Ilara, if you fired that back, you could destroy our own fleet along with theirs, Holt shouted. She didn't look at him. We'll aim it away from Raal Prime. Line up the shot. The Krith weapon's glow dimmed as it completed its pulse. They must have expected the human fleet to be in ruins. Instead, they saw the Horizon's wake still standing. Wrapped in a sphere of blazing white light, Ilara's voice was cold steel. Return to sender. The array released everything at once. A column of pure energy, brighter than a sun, tore across the void. It didn't travel in a straight beam erupted, blooming into a wave like the Black Sun's own, but amplified and sharpened. The blast slammed into the Krith fleet before they could raise full shields. Several ships were vaporized instantly. Others spun out of formation, their hulls torn apart. The central Black Sun generator cracked in two, spilling streams of black light that faded quickly. The battle was over, but the horizon's wake felt like a ship carrying ghosts. The crew had won, yes, but they all knew something had changed forever. Alara stood at the bridge window, looking out at the drifting remains of Krith ships' bits of twisted metal and shattered hulls spun silently, reflecting the cold light of Roll Prime's sun. It should have felt like triumph. Instead, there was only a heavy, quiet tension. Holt stepped beside her. They'll be back, stronger, smarter. Alara didn't look away from the stars. I know. That's why we need to be ready before they arrive. Hours later, a transmission came from the Alliance High Council. It wasn't a congratulations, it was a summons. The council hall was a colossal chamber floating in orbit above Varelian Prime. Its walls were made of living crystal, humming faintly, and its air was always cool and dry. Delegates from dozens of worlds sat in tiered rings, their eyes fixed on the human delegation. Alara walked into that chamber with Holt and Mason Rhee at her side. The eyes that once looked at humans with mild amusement were now sharper, colder. The council speaker, an elder from the Jith Dominion, spoke first. His voice was deep and slow. Captain Ilar Avas of Earth, you stand here as the commander who defeated the Krith Black Sun. The galaxy has taken notice. A murmur swept through the alien ranks. Some looked impressed, others wary. The Aegis Array, the speaker continued. This technology violates 3 separate alliance treaties. Energy conversion on this scale is considered too dangerous. Yet you built it and used it. Holt leaned forward. We used it because without it, we would all be dead. You didn't come to save Roll Prime. We did. That caused a ripple of whispers. Alara said nothing. She simply stood there, her gaze level, her voice calm when she finally spoke. We did what we had to do. Humanity will not apologize for surviving. One of the counselors, a tall, insect-like Varelian, clicked. Her mandibles? You misunderstand. The issue is not only survival, it is balance. No single member of the Alliance should wield such a weapon. Your people now possess a power that could threaten the stability of the galaxy. Ilara's reply was soft but sharp, and yet, when the Krith came to destroy that stability, none of you stopped them. We did. The hearing ended without a clear verdict. The council would deliberate, which everyone knew meant politics would turn slow and dangerous. As the humans left the chamber, whispers followed them, words like dangerous, unpredictable, and must be contained. Back aboard the Horizon's wake, the mood was no lighter. Rhee was studying sensor logs when he looked up suddenly. Captain, we have a problem. On the main display, faint signals blinked at the edge of human space. Small, fast-moving ships alliance. Ships were gathering in a pattern. Holt frowned. They're watching us. Alara didn't need to ask why. She knew. The Alliance didn't fully trust them now. The humans had shown they could win battles the rest of the galaxy feared to fight. That kind of power always made allies uneasy. That night, Alara walked the quiet corridors of her ship. She passed crew members who smiled faintly at her, but whose eyes carried exhaustion. She stopped by the observation deck, where the stars stretched out in infinite silence. She thought of Earth, of the small, stubborn world that had clawed its way into space, while the galaxy laughed. They had been underestimated, ridiculed, ignored, and now they were seen. But being seen was dangerous. The next morning, a coded message arrived not from the Alliance, but from Carovellan, the scaled alien mercenary who had fought beside them. His image appeared on the screen, his voice low. Alara, the Council isn't debating your fate, they're deciding how to take the Aegis from you. They fear it, and fear makes the Alliance act. Holt muttered a curse under his breath. So now, we have to fight our enemies and our allies. Alara's expression didn't change, but inside, her mind was already racing. Then we keep the Aegis hidden, and we build more. Ree looked at her in shock. More. If they find out, she said, they'll know we are ready. That's the only thing they respect. Outside human space was quiet for now, but Elara could feel the storm coming. The Krith would return. The Alliance would tighten its grip, and Earth would have to walk a thin line between defiance and survival. Holt came to stand beside her at the bridge window again. You ever wonder if we've already crossed the point where we can go back? Elara didn't answer right away. She watched a distant comet trail across the darkness, its tail glowing faintly. There's no going back, she finally said. Only forward, and we're not done yet. In the depths of space, far from any sun, the Krith leader stood in the shadow of their rebuilt flagship. Before him, engineers worked to assemble something new, something larger than the Black Sun. The war wasn't over. It was only just beginning. The message came at dawn, ship time. It wasn't from the Alliance Council, it was from the Border Watch station at Vagat Welf. The voice of the officer was shaky. Captain Voss, they're back. Krith fleet bigger than anything we've seen. Moving fast. Estimated time to reach human space. 4 days. Silence filled the horizon's wake. Holt's hand tightened on the railing. 4 days. That's not enough time for reinforcements. Ree looked up from the tactical board. Even if the Alliance sends help, it won't get here before the Krith arrive. Elara already knew the truth, help wasn't coming at all. Later that day, the official transmission from the Alliance confirmed it. The Council's voice was cool and diplomatic. Given the current tensions over the Aegis array, the Alliance has decided to hold back intervention until a full security assessment is made. In other words, they would let humanity fight alone. Holt slammed his fist on the console. They're hanging us out to dry. After we saved Roll Prime, after everything, we're nothing to them now. Elara didn't reply. Her eyes were fixed on the star map. She wasn't surprised. The Council feared the Krith, but they feared human independence more. By the second day, the crew knew. Word spread fast on a ship, and faces in the corridors grew tense. People whispered in the mess hall, their voices low. They all understood this fight might be their last. Elara gathered them in the hangar. Every officer and engineer, every pilot and medic. Her voice was steady, but it carried the weight of steel. The Krith are coming. The Alliance won't help us. That means the survival of our worlds is in our hands alone. I won't lie to you, this will be the hardest fight we've ever faced. But I believe in you. I believe in humanity. She let the words hang in the air before finishing. We've been underestimated since the day we stepped into the stars. This is our chance to show them, all of them, what we're made of. The third day was preparation. Holt oversaw weapon calibration, his gruff voice echoing through the gunnery decks. No misfires, no overheating. If you even think a coil is running hot, you swap it out. We don't get a second chance. Reworked with the engineering crews, installing modified pulse shields around key systems. These aren't perfect, but they'll buy us seconds. In this battle, seconds will mean lives. Even the medical staff, led by Dr. Yara Chen, prepared the sick bay for the wounded they all knew were coming. The Aegis array sat at the heart of the ship, silent and waiting. It had been recharged, but its power cells were fragile in miscalculation, and it could burn itself out forever. On the final night before contact, the crew gathered in the observation deck. No orders, just instinct. They stood together, watching. The endless black of space. Holt stood next to Elara, arms crossed. I've been in enough battles to know the feeling before one starts. This feels different. Elara nodded slowly. Because this isn't about winning, it's about not disappearing. Dr. Chen joined them quietly. If we fail, there won't be anyone left to remember Earth. The words were heavy, but no one turned away. They stayed there, staring into the darkness, until the comms officer's voice broke the silence. Captain, Krith fleet has entered the outer perimeter. They came like a shadow made of fire. The Krith fleet filled the void with black warships, each bristling with energy cannons and fighter swarms. At the center was something new, an enormous vessel shaped like a jagged spear, its hull glowing with a deep crimson light. Ree's scanners screamed warnings. That's their new flagship. Energy output is triple the Black Sun's. And, Captain, it's got a weapon array we've never seen before. Ilara's eyes narrowed. Then we find out how to break it. The first exchange of fire shook the horizon's wake to its core. Krith fighters darted through the human defensive lines, forcing Holt's gunners to fire in rapid bursts. Shields flared and buckled under the pounding of enemy cannons. They're targeting our engines, Ree shouted. Redirect shield power. Holt, get those flanking fighters off us, Ilara ordered. Every second was chaos flashes of light, explosions, the deep shudder of the hull under impact. The humans fought with everything they had. The smaller frigates in Earth's fleet darted between the massive Krith warships, delivering close-range missile strikes. Destroyers unleashed broadside cannon fire that lit up the void, but for every Krith ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. Hours passed. The horizon's wake was bleeding power, its shields down to 30%. Smoke filled the engineering deck. The crew was exhausted, but they didn't stop. Holt's voice came through the intercom, strained but fierce. Captain, if we're going to use the Aegis, it has to be now. We won't last another hour. Ilara's gaze locked on the